"You throw like a girl," one of my classmates yelled during a game of softball. Now, we must have been about 9 or 10 years old, and we were in 4th grade, and I was living in Dakar, Senegal, in West Africa at the time. This comment was directed at a fellow teammate, and as we're playing softball, you know, on this, it's like this field, it's more sand than it's grass because Senegal has this very dry desert climate. I remember thinking, nice, that is awesome. Throwing like a girl. That is a job done damn well right there. Little did I know that the classmate who had yelled the comment was actually aiming to insult our fellow teammate. It was by far not my earliest lesson in gender stereotyping and sexism. It was by far not my hardest lesson in gender stereotyping and sexism. But it was a good one. Having always enjoyed games and sports, I started to notice the ball possession on our school field. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that the ball possession was about 100% for the boys. So rallying a few of the girls that I had become friends with, and I just recently had moved to Senegal from Spain, my brother and I were incredibly new to the school. Rallying a few of the girls, we started to join in on the regular soccer game. Now, we went to an international school where you're averaging about 10 students per class, so the amount of kids that you could be friends with was limited. And lucky for us, the same was true for the game on the field. By virtue of the fact that a few extra players in the form of female classmates made the teams bigger and stronger, we were actually welcome to play. Now, I must admit, it actually really helped that my best friend at the time, you know, the one that you share that Best Friends Forever bracelet with, that friend, she was this American girl, and her dad was in the US Marines, and she grew up with athleticism and sport from day one. She was really, really lucky and a superb role model on the field. So we started playing on a regular basis, and this caught the attention of our physical education teacher, and before we knew it, we had girl captains and boy captains switching on and off. We had started a girls' sports discourse on a playing field where this hadn't yet happened before. Now, 16 years later, I work in marketing and communications and in women's sports, and I must say that when it comes to the conversations we have about women in sport, the discourse around women in sport, the way that the media represents female athletes, we still have an incredibly long way to go to reach an equal playing field with our male counterparts. "You throw like a girl" is still a viable insult. And when we do have the conversation, it's either around the struggling female football player who by default is labeled a lesbian, or the soccer babe, during which we seemingly have to associate sport with women's nude bodies. To gain the relevance and ownership in sport that women deserve, we have a lot of work carved out for us. And to gain this ownership and relevance, we can start by using our own unique storytelling techniques. And it's about this unique storytelling proposition of women in sport that I want to talk today. So in 1995, almost 20 years ago, Nike released an amazing ad. And in this advertisement, they featured girls aged 9 to 14 saying, "If you let me play, if you let me play, I will more likely be able to stay in school. If you let me play, I am more likely to leave a man that beats me." It's such an important ad. Now, the only thing we could perhaps say about it today is that if you change the word "if" to "when," so that it becomes "when you let me play," the ad would be even stronger. But regardless, it was monumental for its time, and it still is now. It's such an important message that Nike was giving at the time. As we continue to carve into this existing male-dominated field of sport, we have to keep in mind two very important truths. One, that we are responsible for the stories that we tell boys and girls about young women and girls in sport. And two, that these stories are actually much more important than we may realize. So why don't we leverage this unique storytelling proposition of women in sport? Today, globally and in South Africa, we tell a completely skewed story of women in sport. And why? We have fantastic female athletes here. Netball, running, our female football team does an amazing job. Not to mention that the Springboks just qualified for the 2014 IRB Women's Rugby World Cup. That is amazing. Instead, we see female athletes being the target of violent attacks by mere virtue of the fact that they are participating in a male-dominated domain. Players sporting what is considered a less than feminine physique are targeted, they're brutalized, they're attacked, and at best, they are excluded. Female football players, for example, by participating in this male-dominated sport, are rejecting the gender role prescribed to them. And they pay a price. They pay a very high price. Let me just share with you today some of the ways in which we talk about women in sport, overheard on the radio. After tennis player Bartoli's straight set of victories over her opponents, a BBC reporter was caught asking his listeners, do you think Bartoli's dad told her when she was little she was never going to be a looker? That she was never going to be a Sharapova and you had to be scrappy and fight? As if being pretty has any bearing whatsoever on tennis skills. Or what about the fact that there are discussions around forcing badminton players to wear skirts and tightening female football kits to make both sports more attractive to watch? Or what about the fact that former sports commentator Andy Gray made sexist comments about a female match official saying she probably didn't know the offside rule? Or what about the fact that here in South Africa, some of the male players on our football team refuse to allow their female counterparts to use the same locker rooms because they believe this brings bad luck? An ad campaign entitled "Strong is Beautiful" highlights female tennis players. I mean, I don't know about you, I think tennis is one of those sports where we already kind of celebrate the players, and I don't know if tennis was really the one sport that needed a product strategy. Okay, granted, there is an ad campaign in support of tennis, but for some reason this "Strong is Beautiful" ad campaign features only flowy dresses and lots of flowy hair, and personally, I fail to see how that represents either strength or beauty. Why can we not represent strength with blood, sweat, and tears? And if blood, sweat, and tears is too much, a simple image of a female athlete holding up her medal with pride will do. You know, I work in marketing and advertising, brand strategy, and I understand, we use advertising strategy because it works. Fantastic. But when it comes to women in sport and the stories we tell about women in sports, I feel like we're a little old school, going back to a time where women weren't even allowed to attend football games and annoy their husbands or do things like, vote. And you have to ask yourself, are the stories that we are continuously telling, are they too unequal? Because it does get to that point. Sport marketing to women is becoming increasingly about what advertisers want us to think sport can do for our physique purely on an aesthetic level. What it means to us, how much more attractive we'll be. But what about all the other benefits that sport has for women? The fact that we are economically empowered, better equipped to make better decisions, more likely to be successful, more likely to avoid early pregnancy. These are so important. It doesn't focus anymore on the fact that sport actually propels young girls to stay in school longer. Now, to be honest, we are responsible for the stories that we tell, boys and girls, about the participation of girls and young women in sport. We are responsible to tell the stories that get our adrenaline going. In fact, a recent survey conducted shows that sex sells sex, not women's sport. Both men and women interviewed actually said, you know what? Seeing an athlete sexualized makes me doubt the skills of that athlete more. We all want to see that amazing slam dunk, that impressive goal. We all want to be a part of that feeling. In fact, when I was 10 years old, I had two dreams. One was to be a world famous actress, and the other one was to be able to do a slam dunk right over Michael Jordan's head. So this isn't about strong is beautiful. This is just about strong. And this isn't about forcing female athletes into a box or a category that we all feel comfortable with. No, this is about respecting women for the strength, for the power that they bring to the field. So if you have a girl in your life, a classmate or a student or a daughter, tell her, it's not about pretty. It's about pretty smart. It's about pretty courageous. And it is about pretty strong. Thank you.